I'm Gilbert Scherer, and I've been involved with the IWMF for 5 years now, since my wife was diagnosed with WM, which was a tremendous shocker for both of us for multiple reasons, and couldn't understand a thing about it initially. First of all, she was 53. And this was a disease of typically of older men. We scratched our heads quite a bit, and needless to say, the scientific reality of it was something that we had to reckon with. Early on, we recognized the significance of the IWMF. Shortly after receiving her diagnosis, we went online to get educated and learn something about this affliction she'd been diagnosed with. And she got a prognosis that she would live maybe 5 or 6 years, which just completely flipped us out. How could that possibly be the case? And we realized before too long that it really wasn't the case. And in large measure, the source of our newfound dependable knowledge was the IWMF. Shortly after she made it into remission, she responded very well from her rituximab regimen, and we went to the Mayo Clinic and had wonderful care there, which we'll forever be thankful for. And we learned about the IWMF, I believe, there. Went from there shortly after she got much better to our first IWMF conference. And learned a tremendous amount of minutia and generality, and developed a base understanding that we actually did not have prior to then. And of course met a lot of other people who we could commiserate with and collaborate with, and understand the predicament that we were in together, and contemplate the paths out of it to the extent that such exist. But just the learning, everybody knows that among the most terrible things of all is uncertainty and lack of knowledge and ignorance. And the IWMF membership services was extremely beneficial in overcoming, neutralizing some of that uncertainty, just to know a whole lot more, and recognize that this 5 to 6 year prognosis initially that we had, 5 to 6 years to live, was just total BS, and that the world had really changed, the scientific community, and what it had delivered to Waldenstrom's patients had tremendously changed, and the outlook was way different, and that things were further changing, and changing rapidly. And as the years went by, my wife got very involved with IWMF, and that was terrific, because I realized, and she realized, that if, as an orphan disease, there really wasn't anyone else who was there to take care of WMers other than WMers. If WMers didn't rise to the occasion to meet the challenge, then it just wasn't going to happen, which is the case with pretty much all orphan diseases. And I'm very proud and pleased to be able to say that so many times we've heard that the organizations, the care groups, the support groups for other orphan diseases do not hold a candle to the IWMF. And how wonderful it would be if we could can whatever spirit we've got and offer it to other orphan diseases, but we've done so much as an organization in terms of not just educating the members and getting them to be able to place the disease in perspective in their lives in a much more realistic fashion than reading, God forbid, WebMD or some other silly source of knowledge, and as well getting away from oftentimes provincial oncologists or GPs and their limited knowledge about WM, and being able to get a much better full palette of understanding. And on the membership side and the membership services side, and then as well, there's so much coming out. The pace of science is changing so rapidly, and there's so many new therapies being tested, and that's really what's required, and that's what we're very hopeful of, is how this rapid change will increasingly yield new approaches that can render WM for the time being, for the foreseeable future, a chronic condition that can be dealt with, a chronic condition that can be cared for and controlled without much compromise to quality of life. And then in the not too distant future, that will turn up that elusive cure. It's bound to happen. It's going to happen. There's things on the horizon that are starting to take that shape when that could not be said 5 or 10 years ago. Looking forward, though, that is now truly something that's a reasonable thing to look forward to, a cure. What it takes, though, is moolah. What it takes is money. What it takes is funding of this research that's happening. It takes a commitment of a new generation of researchers who can only be brought to the table if there's funding for their efforts. And the major the Institutes of Cancer and the NIH and the other major organizations that fund cancer research, they have their hands full. They can't pay attention in a meaningful fashion to rare diseases like Waldenstrom's. That's why giving now and giving for Waldenstrom's is so important. It will not come from any place else. No other source will fund the critical research that's needed now. We're making great progress. We have tremendous momentum. It can only be maintained if the researchers who are making that momentum, those who have their oars in the water and pushing the research effort forward, if they continue to be funded and their efforts don't suffer any discontinuity, if they can continue to receive funding and move their research efforts forward. It's amazing how many different efforts are now underway. When we first got involved with the organization, there were, I think, 2 or 3 projects being funded. Now it's in the neighborhood of 8 to 10. It's extremely exciting. We know a cure is out there, and we all want it sooner than later. If you want to advance that, the only way to do it is with the funding of the research.